What's up, Don't Go Out There fans? We appreciate you tuning in again. Brian and Nico are joining me, Dustin. We went and saw A Quiet Place Day One in theaters, and we're going to hit you with a little instant reaction here. Spoilers will be prominent, I'm assuming. So turn this off if you haven't seen it. Go watch the damn movie and come back to us. Um, I'll get us kicked off with just some general thoughts. I there was only one other person in the theater with me, so I was able to take detailed notes on my phone the whole time. But I, when I saw this movie was being made, I was like, "But why?" And did we really need it? Like that was the two questions that I had. Not that the trailer looked bad, not that anything about it looked bad, but it's just like it felt so unnecessary. And after watching the movie, yeah, those feelings were confirmed. So that's kind of how I felt. Nico, what do you think? What's your initial thoughts?
Same. I mean, me and you were texting about it a little bit, and I only went and saw the movie just for hashtag content reasons.
Yeah.
Uh, I will say positive. I have some positives for sure. I don't really have any negatives except the stuff we've talked about in the past with prequels, and I'll just wait till we get to
Mm,
positives and negatives when we get to that.
okay.
Well, I'm not
Brian?
afraid to say that I really liked it. Um, I mean, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I agree. It does probably work better as a good standalone film, and maybe not a Quiet Place prequel. And there is, like you said, there are some negatives I had that come from being a standpoint. But I thought it was just a really good suspense slash horror movie. I go to the movies to be entertained and from start to finish, and I really was. Now, I mean,
Hmm.
I did have a shitty theater experience. I think I texted you guys a little bit about it at the start, but and a fucking for the record, hate all you assholes that bring kids to these fucking things and don't turn off your cell phones, won't shut the fuck up. But anyway, I did go walk away from the movie fulfilled. I found Lupita, Lupita,
Lupita.
Lupita.
Lupita was good in Us, but in this one, she was different. Like I loved her in this one. Like it just had a lot of heart.
Hmm. Okay. No, I definitely agree, and I was entertained. So that's not what I meant. So let's go ahead and jump into the pros, and I'll get us kicked off here. But I got to be honest with you. I've got a lot more cons than pros, but that's not to say this is a bad movie. I love the concept in the first two movies, and I think that this one continued on what worked in the others. Lupita Nyong'o was brilliant. She plays a terrified protagonist so well, and I think her character battling cancer added two really good layers. Like
Yeah.
number one, on top of her plight of the world ending, she's dealing with the pain and stress of fighting death, which makes the audience, care and empathize that much more. And secondly, that means her character has even more of an uphill battle. Like we've seen in the first two films how you can survive if you can just be quiet, but what if you need treatment and need medications? Like how can you remain quiet when you're in excruciating pain? And so I think that was a good added layer that
Hmm.
I wish they would have expanded on a little bit more, but I think it was fine. Bullet Bourbon and Stella at the pizza place, that's a hell of a silver lining. Like if the world's ending, I'm going to try to find that pizzeria because that's a hell of a silver lining. And then uh, is extremely emotional scene when she basically sacrificed herself making all that noise so that Eric could get away safely, and she gave him her cat, literally, not metaphorically. That's not a sex joke. Uh, that really tugged at the heartstrings, and there was great tension when he was running to the water. And so I think this movie had a lot of positives to it. It was a fun watch, like you said. It's going to sound like I have a lot more cons because I do, but that's not to say I didn't like it. But Nico, what was your pros?
Oh yeah, I'm just going to echo a few things you mentioned as well. Acting was great. Lupita, she's been on our show. What this? Well, if you count this reaction, this is our third time with her. Us and Little Monsters. I think she's
Yep.
carried both of those other movies.
Oh yeah.
She's a great actress. She's fantastic. She did great in this one as well. Uh, Great facial acting with the fear because there's not a lot of talking. She comes across very sincere. I like the touch that you added as well, Dustin, that you mentioned with her being sick, having cancer. That was a nice
Hmm.
touch that you care about her, not just for her making noise, but she's sick. So
Yeah.
that was
Right.
nice. Joseph Quinn, I think he answered some questions I had about him from Stranger Things. Like he's Eddie from Stranger Things season 4. Was that 4? Yeah, season 4. He was just kind of like a fun, lighthearted character in that season. But I thought he showed some good acting chops. I thought he did a fantastic job. I didn't know Alex Wolff was in this. Alex, I think, did a great job as well. Like you mentioned, Dustin, there's a lot of action, a lot of emotion. And I wrote that in my letterbox review, which is kind of part of my negatives, but I'll touch on that as well. But I thought the action was great. A lot of great action scenes. This movie looked big as well. Like it's in New York City. There's a lot of
Mhm.
big landscape scenery. And I'll let Brian touch on. I'll let Brian take over in just a second. But the last pro that I want to give is I like the fact they brought back. I don't want to butcher the man's name. Jaimin Hansu.
Diamond.
I
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
the fact they brought him back, gave him a
Yeah.
little cameo because he wasn't used in A Quiet Place 2 that much. So I appreciated the fact that they brought him back just to make an appearance.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess you kind of assume that that boat got to that island or whatever that they find in Quiet Place too. So that is pretty cool. And you talked about the big action scenes, and that's where I can forgive this a little bit for some of the one of the negatives that I have that I'll get to. But we saw the invasion already in the beginning of Quiet Place 2, but we saw it from a small town perspective. And so seeing it from a large scale in a large city, and it almost had, you're gonna hate me for saying this, but it almost had a little bit of Cloverfield vibes to it for me. Um, I thought, like you mentioned, Lupita and Joseph Quinn, I think they had great on screen chemistry, and it wasn't a romantic one. It was just this beautiful thing. It was well written between I thought Krasinski and Sarnowski, very human. It's just like I said, a very simple plot. It's different than what you usually get from everyone just trying to survive. Like she was dying anyway, so it was a nice little wrinkle. She just wanted some free fucking pizza, and so it was nice. I loved it. And
Hey, I'll
speaking of
never
Star,
fault someone for that.
and, and speaking of Sarnowski, I think it was absolutely beautifully shot. That stood out to me so much. Explosions, for example, like in the theater, they were so disorient. Not the theater I was watching it in, but the theater that they were hiding in at first. They were so disorienting when they started going off. Like the evacuation, the trampling scene was very claustrophobic, especially when she got trapped under the car. There was a long shot of her that I noticed too, of her walking through the streets and alleys with stuff happening, people getting picked off behind her. I thought that was a very stunning shot, very very beautifully shot. And usually the jump scares I would say are a negative, but for me, like this one, I mean, it was a positive. They were effective. There were a few that scared the shit out of me. Like I was like, holy shit, on some of this stuff, and that's not something I can say for a lot of movies.
Yeah. I hear you. Let's go ahead and jump into the cons though, because you guys said
There you
a couple things that I'm like, hmm. So, consistent with my criticism of the first two movies, I just find it hard to believe that people would just know to stay quiet immediately, especially early on in this movie when the alien was in the face of her nurse, like literally face to face. My first instinct when it started to get that close would be, oh shit, and run. But like Buddy just froze, looked it dead in the eyes, and like somehow knew to stay quiet. I don't know. That's a little too convenient. Um, I also find it hard to believe that the two kids hiding in the fountain would have been alive. Small kids do not know how to be quiet when they're scared. Like they would have been screaming and crying. And oh, they acted excited and thankful for a fucking almond joy.
go.
I would have snitched on her to the aliens if she offered me that nasty ass candy bar. So that's the most unrealistic thing in the movie. Um, they evacuated by water. Like they knew the aliens couldn't swim. That's an awful fast to come to that conclusion. I felt like they blew up the bridges and just automatically were evacuating by water. We hadn't seen any of them die by water yet, so I don't know about that.
Well, I just to rebuttal that, the
Okay,
the helicopter that came across while they were in the theater did tell everyone to be quiet, that they know that they reacted on sound. And
how?
when that thing came back, I don't know how the military knew, but I'm just
Yeah,
saying they knew, and that when they came back around the second time, said something about the evacuation to get to the water because they can't deal, or because they can't live in water. And so, like, how the military knew, now that's definitely, I don't know, but
yeah,
the people knew because of that. If you wanted to, I
yeah.
get it.
I would just much rather see the process, like see people coming to these realizations, like, oh shit, this worked. Maybe we should try this. That would have helped me a lot. And then the idiot that grabbed her foot when she was under the cab. Why? Why grab her and yell, "Help me"? It was completely illogical. It was just to give us a scare as the audience. It was unneeded. I don't understand Eric's character. Nico, you mentioned him. I didn't know that he was in Stranger Things, so I understand why you like his character more now. But not only was it a little too convenient for me that he just floated up in the flooded subway terminal, but he was a huge creeper following her like that. And then he turned out to be just an absolute pussy. I feel like his character should have been an early teenage boy. Like he was scared of everything. And then speaking of pussy, the damn cat was so frustrating to me. It kept running off. And I highly doubt that a cat would have never meowed or purred the entire time. No, not buying it. And then when Eric went to the pharmacy, how the fuck did the cat get out of the church? Like why? Didn't seem likely that she would have let it out the door or let it out of her sight right there, or the group would have if she was passed out. Got a couple more. When the ferry was taking people and hitting the horn, I thought of something like, why didn't the Coast Guard? This is just not just in this movie, but like in the other two movies. Why didn't the Coast Guard just set up boats, say 50 yards off the coast, and blare music loudly to draw them into the water and drown them all? Crisis
Yeah,
averted. But
or shoot them.
but then we do see that the aliens or creatures, whatever, weren't so gung ho about chasing humans into the water as they were in part two. So I don't know. That was a little inconsistent to me. Um, Diamond Hansu, when Eric does make it to the boat, we see him again, and I'd forgotten he was in the movie. Like he was severely underutilized in this movie, just like he was in the second one. That bothered me. But this last one, I'll shut up. Like I said, I had my phone out the whole time taking notes. I was in there solo dolo. I think my biggest gripe is that it was just unnecessary. Like we saw in the Quiet Place Part Two what day one was like, and we saw how it went down. And yeah, this goes more in depth, and it's a different location. But did we need that? To me, no. But that's not to say the movie was bad because it wasn't. It just didn't need to be made. It doesn't add anything new or anything that we hadn't considered. Now shut up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much echo all of your qualms as well. Maybe not to the extent like I didn't mind Eric's character per se. I think he felt like a you find out his story. His parents are back in England or something like that. He came to the States to go to law school. He probably just felt alone and wanted to do something nice for somebody. I mean, I feel that like you don't know like what your future holds. Maybe you can do one more nice thing before you're wiped off the face of the earth in a violent, horrific way. So maybe that was his approach. I'm just saying, honestly, I know you haven't watched Stranger Things, but he really wasn't my favorite character per se in season 4. He wasn't bad, but that show just has a horrible repeated process of bringing in cool side characters and killing them. This movie, another praise I'll give it before I jump into more qualms is I was surprised they killed Lupita at the end, to be honest, how they did. Uh, there were some stakes, at least. They killed off their biggest name in the movie. I didn't expect that. Personally, I wish she would have just died like in that pizzeria at the end when she's looking at the pictures. Maybe she just dies from her sickness there. I'd have probably felt a little more fulfilled that way than her getting killed by the creatures. But I'll just read my letterbox review, just a little part of it. I think the film knew it was a prequel and tried to distract from that by going all in with action and emotional pulls. And I think that's what they did, but it still didn't necessarily work the best for me just because, like you said, Dustin, it didn't do anything new or reveal anything. Brian, you did make a good point. It was in a bigger, much bigger city than wherever Emily Blunt's family is. So it was on a large scale. New York City, you can't get much bigger than that in the States. So the action and all that was cool, the scenery and all that. But I really just felt like, I don't want to say the word cash grab, but it kind of just
Mm-hmm.
felt like it didn't do anything new enough for it to be made. And I re-listened to our Pearl episode the other day, just because we're getting ready to go see Maxine, and you kind of echoed the same thing. Like it looked great, the acting was great, but I'm like an hour into the movie, and it's like, why is the movie made? It's like it just doesn't do anything for me. But I saw a lot of people on horror communities, the X on X and Facebook groups who really loved it and loved the emotional pull. So I liked it. I just didn't love it. Brian, what'd you think?
Uh, I have some of the same quals, especially the cat. Like that, the
Yeah.
cat got on my nerves twice at least because I thought, when the hell you said meow? I was like, this thing would be hissing at these things at least. Trying to
Mm-hmm.
the cat's defense mechanism would be it would be gone. So I kept waiting for it to get picked off. So that was the big nitpick of mine. And because that cat led to the construction scene or whatever, where he was going through that I say it was construction. I'm not real sure if it was, but where he was
I know
trying
what
to
you mean.
get the cat from those uh, beams
Still
and stuff.
beams.
It was just
Yeah.
like I hated that whole part because I was like, why the hell would you even go try to get that cat? It's been following you around the whole time anyway. Just leave it alone. It'll come back. It's just that whole part I thought was
And
just extra time.
and also like that scene was weird to me anyway, because like, why is this section of New York burning? Like, the screen, it looked like fire. It had that orange hue to the sky and to the
Yeah.
to look of everything. It's like, okay, let's get overly dramatic here.
And the part I was talking about with it being a prequel that went against it that I hated is the announcement, and that's what I said to you, the announcement that they couldn't swim. Like, to me, that ruins the revelation that in Quiet Place, is it two, where they
Mhm.
get the water. Like, to me, that's a big revelation that they've come across. And so now, if you do watch these in chronological order, that ruins it. And so I don't really, I was not a big fan of that whatsoever at all. And then my biggest qualm was on a personal level. It was just that it was not a very good theater experience. And I think having
Same.
having the movie itself just be so quiet, and then so you hear everything in the theater, made it so much worse.
Can't
Yeah.
relate, brothers. Can't relate. But yeah, no, I hear you. And I think we pretty much agree on a lot of the main points there. I don't think any of us has said it's a bad movie, because I don't think it is. It's a fine movie. This is, to me, this is a movie that was made for hardcore fans. They're like, "Ooh, I need more." When you watch the first two, and so if the first two movies aren't your favorites, I don't think you're going to love this movie. I did see a couple people say that this is the best movie in the franchise, and I don't agree with that. I think you can definitely tell that Krasinski wasn't as hands-on with this one. I mean,
Yeah.
Sarnowski directed; it was a different director, and that tells it was shot in different ways. There's some beautiful cinematography and all that, but yeah. You guys have any other
I got another
thoughts?
nitpick. I wish they would have kept Alex Wolf around a little longer. I hated the way he died personally. Like, his shirt catches and it rips. That's what got him killed. Like, he just turned off a loud ass generator. Like, I would rather him die trying to turn the generator off than his shirt getting ripped.
Yeah.
That kind of like made me more mad than it should have. I like Alex Wolf.
Well,
He's a good
yeah,
actor.
and I agree because their walking around made more noise than that shirt rip would have. But then they made it like the loudest fucking shirt rip of all time too.
Yeah.
There's no way. Yeah.
So I'm glad you said that, Brian, because that's what I meant when I said you can tell it's shot in a different way. Like, the directing between Sarnowski and Krasinski, I think Krasinski paid a lot more attention to detail as far as the decibel level of
Yeah.
just normal things. And this movie was much louder. There was
Yeah.
it was much louder. And I get it, day one you don't know to be super super quiet, so maybe that's why. But even, day one and part two, I think they were quieter when shit was really going down.
But the
But
thing is, like you mentioned, like it being more like it was louder. Like, they showed that scene where like Lupita is walking against the crowd and like
Yeah.
you see like people are pulling rolling book bags that's
Yeah.
bumping over rocks. There should have been
yeah,
all out chaos that whole time, in my
I was
yeah.
gonna
opinion.
say it should have happened way sooner than it did because I was like, it went on so long that I wrote in my notes, like, there's no way that they wouldn't be fucking all dead right now because it's too fucking loud. And yeah, they eventually get attacked, but to me that was took way too long to do.
Hmm. Yep.
And
Yeah.
I was
And
building up tension, but
I think that this movie, another thing about that, I think this movie kind of, when movies do something, they're like, "Ooh, that was a hit, so let's kind of beat the dead horse, and do it again in the next sequel, and the next one, or whatever." The scene where John Krasinski's talking to his son under the waterfall.
yeah.
Like, the whole scene with the fountain to me was just a way to call back to that, and it felt shoehorned in. It's like, I don't know, how would she know? How would she know that the water masked the sound? And then, when she yells
Well, that was the
and
kids who
shit.
figured it out because they were the ones hiding. I definitely don't believe kids would have figured it out.
Well, they were hiding underneath it, but they weren't the ones that said anything. They weren't the ones that talked, were they?
She might have been the one who told him to get under there because wasn't they just hiding behind something?
No, I think they were hiding. They were under the centerpiece of the fountain.
Okay. Yeah, definitely don't
Shane
mind
almost
kids figuring that out.
She handed him a fucking almond joy. I swear to God. But anyway, you guys have any other final thoughts before we wrap it up and get out of here?
I just, like I said, I think that it works to me on by itself standalone movie, not necessarily as a. I didn't look at it as adding anything extra to the franchise besides just doing
Mhm.
the same exact thing on a larger scale. But I mean, that's kind of the. I think it did enough to me to be made. But I did appreciate, like I said, most of all, the unique perspective from the story standpoint of, like you guys mentioned, Lupita being battling cancer, not really trying to survive. She's just trying to live, get some free fucking pizza. She's just trying to live and live for a few more days or a few more hours or whatever. She's not trying to get out, and that was unique to me.
No, I agree with that 100%. Actually, I did like that touch a lot. She just wants to get the most of what little bit of life she has left. I really like that. She did a great job.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
You know, I just thought of something too. I may be overly harsh in my criticism of this movie because you praised it for the unique perspective in a different location. Now I got to thinking, holy shit, that sounds like what I said about the Purge movies. It's like they're giving us different, and I like the Purge
Yeah.
movies. And it's like, so I don't know what's my problem with this one. So I take back some of what I said. Yeah, I like
Well,
it.
if it just didn't hit, it just didn't hit for you. I mean,
No, and I think it did. I think I just went into it wanting to criticize it because I knew we were doing this for content. Maybe that's what it was. I was just
I,
looking for nitpicks. But if
I
you go
get
into
it.
this movie just wanting to have fun, you're definitely going to do that. And I mean, I
no,
gave it three. I gave it 3 out of 5 on Letterboxd, so which is
Yeah.
pretty consistent with what I gave the first two. So I'm not shitting on the movie.
the most frustrating thing to me is like I think I said this at the end of our review for the second one. It's like just show us them finally killing these damn things and like getting the world back in order. Like why not just make that movie? Like the end of the first one and the end of the second one basically end the same way with the little girl like killing them with this bad radio frequencies. Like why are they just not making this movie? Like just make that one.
Call it Loud Place.
A Quiet Place, last day, days
a
end or
quiet,
something. I don't know.
a quiet place. Crank up the volume. There we go.
There you go. Yeah, hell yeah. Why not?
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, we've been on here for over 20 minutes now, and if we haven't confused you by the jumping back and forth on opinions and takes of this movie, then go see for yourself. Support cinema. Appreciate everyone tuning in. And yeah, catch you next time.